Hello and welcome to the Nemea podcast. I'm Nadia Cater. Today we have a very special guest. Also, Jamie's joining us again. Hey, Jamie.
Yes, hi.
We are in Farmington. We're at San Juan Community College, and we're interviewing Jennifer Martinez-Maestas, the incredible director of San Juan's ACE program, so the Academic and Career Engagement Center. So, Jennifer, recently we saw that your program is highlighted, right? Top performing adult ed program in the nation. So that's kind of what prompted. I mean, of course, I always want to talk to you. And it's great to visit other, programs. You guys have a really great campus. I just have to say, I keep comparing it to when I went to college, and my college is probably different, but man, New Mexico has some nice colleges.
Mm-hmm.
You guys.
Community colleges.
Yeah.
We're so lucky to be here. A year before the pandemic, we moved in and we were here just a few months and then got shut down from the pandemic. But prior to that, the adult ed program was in a really old building across the parking lot. They actually just tore it down a couple of months ago. We had duct tape on the carpet and you could see the outside through the walls. And we had two bathrooms for 250 students.
Wow.
Whoa. But we loved it. We didn't know. You don't know what you know, right? Or you don't know what you don't know. And so we loved it. We really called that a little love nest. Our students were comfortable there. We were comfortable there. And so when they moved us into this building, they did it partly with bond money, and they voted it, our community did, and they used it to buy this building. We actually share this building with Farmington Municipal Schools, and we're co-located with the Department of Workforce Solutions. So they're right on the other side of us. But when we moved in, honestly, we were a little uncomfortable. It was really nice and really fancy, and it took us a little bit to kind of find our groove here and get comfortable. We have great space. The really, really important part of our campus now is the technology. We asked them to put whiteboards on every single wall that they could, and then we have walls of windows. Our students, they deserve this space.
I agree. Absolutely.
It's incredible. You guys have some really nice classrooms. I see that you do have multiple screens too. We're in a classroom right now that has television screens. It has a huge projector in the corner. There's a desk all the way on the other side, kind of like a teacher station. Yeah. And then you have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 6 groups of tables. It's really comfortable in here. I'm not including stuff on the side. This is really wonderful space. And also, I was admiring, as I'm wont to do, I was really admiring a lot of your professional books. You have a ton of academic books for students, but then I see that you have a lot of adult education focused books. I saw you had 4 or 5 Freire books in your office, Jennifer. I was peeking.
There's so much inspiration. I mean, how can you not have that? Professional development is such a huge part of success. If you don't take care of your teachers, if you take care of your students, it just doesn't make sense to not do that. And so with PD, it's personal, right? I mean, there's certain things that we need to know that are technical for the job, but the other piece of that is that personal passion. And if we have a robust way of providing access to instructors, they find passion in different things, and then we share that. So that's part of our success, is that we have a really robust PD system, and I can kind of share a little bit about that later. But we encourage on this team that everybody pick something that they're passionate about, because I can hand out jobs and pieces, but they're not going to put the work into it that they would if they were able to really pick the piece. And so all of our high impact practices, one person leads. We call them our area resident or our local resident expert on that subject, but it's their job to lead the PD for the year. And I can share with you who does it and how we do that, because there's so much thrown at educators. I mean, there's so many high impact practices, best practices, and you can't possibly keep up with all of the research. You just can't. I mean, as we evolve and when you take evolution into consideration, there's just not enough hours in the day.
Right.
At least have a balanced life. There's not.
Absolutely. So, I do have some questions prepared. I really love where you're going with this, but I just want to take a step back and just to ask just a little bit about you, Jennifer. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into adult education?
Adult education, Jamie, we joke about this all the time, but it's Hotel California. You check in and you can never leave. And it's true a little bit, but in a really good way, because once you find that niche, that passion, you don't want to leave.
Exactly.
And so I've been here a couple decades working in adult education. It started I graduated in 1999. That summer I started college, and my sister started working at San Juan College. And she was really good friends with the VP at that point. And the VP said, I'll give your sister a job. And so I started in a work study position here at SJC, and I was going to college here. And then I moved into a new position and a new position. And then in 2004, one of my colleagues who ran the literacy program said, please come and work for me. And I was really happy where I was. And I was like, yeah, there's nothing you can give me that would make me move. And she said, please come work for me. Please, please, please. And so I applied and she hired me. And then the rest has been history. 20 years later, I have taught all subjects of HSE and ELL and literacy. Project Read was the program that I started in. And prior to 2015, the literacy program and the adult ed program were two separate entities. And around 2015-ish, we merged, and as we merged, we were serving the same population of students. And so we just created a more robust adult ed system where we had HSC, literacy, family literacy, ESL, and then some things have changed since then. We had some directors leave and some programs left our program, and then they kind of came back. And so it's kind of full circle now for Project Read and adult education that we're really now the ACE Center, the Academic and Career Engagement Center, because now we offer a really robust community program with lots of things that the students can take advantage of here.
And you're the director of all that.
I am the director of all of that. However, I'm probably the least important person because I have an incredible team. None of this would happen without the teachers and our team. Like our data analyst, Vanessa, is incredible. She's been here for 15 years. Pandora is our senior administrative assistant, and she's the real boss around here. She really kind of keeps everything together. And then, of course, our teachers who are in the trenches with the students.
And credit where credit's due. Yes, remember your teachers. So I'm just gonna move on a little bit. Just let's talk about just Farmington in general. Can you tell us a little bit about the population of students and what kind of industries are they interested in? Because we're very college and career focused.
Absolutely. No, of course. So Farmington has a population of about 50,000, but we serve a tri-city area, which includes Aztec, Bloomfield, and then we're butted up next to the largest Navajo Nation. And so when we go west from Shiprock and beyond, we really serve a county of like 120,000 people. And the nearest adult ed program aside from us in this area is Durango, Colorado, and Cortez, Colorado. So we serve a really wide county here, and we're the only show in town. And because of that, we have to take our programs incredibly seriously. When students don't have an option to go somewhere else, like in Albuquerque, you can change programs if it's not the right fit. We don't have that option here. So we have to show up for every single one of our students. It's a lot of responsibility.
It is. And
I'll tell you, coming from Albuquerque and being primarily in Albuquerque most of my career, you don't think about that. You don't think about a program that serves close to 150,000 people with such a wide geography. We're talking a huge, massive land, as a lot of places in New Mexico are. So it's definitely a different mindset.
Well, it's a pretty large socioeconomic dissonance, right? Trauma-informed teaching and learning is a huge part of our success here at ACE, but it's because we have to understand the barriers and the needs of our students. And we have students who come from lower socioeconomics, who don't have access, who have never had access, who are disenfranchised by public education, and then they show up here.
One thing I do really appreciate of what you just said, and Jennifer, is we are the only option, so we have to show up for students. And I think that is something that you don't always hear every day, because it's kind of like, well, there's only so much we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And some students will just fall behind, and that's just the reality. But I do really appreciate that, kind of you coming up and saying, no, we have to be our best, and we try.
Yeah, when we looked at trauma-informed teaching practices, one of the pieces of that was a huge aha for us was the students who we weren't retaining.
Mm-hmm.
They were the ones who needed us the most. And so when you look at that, you're like, what do you do in that case, right? How do you serve the students who need us the most when they're not showing up, when they're not persisting? There's not a lot of success here. That was a huge aha, and we planned a ton around that in our program.
That's amazing. Can you, just for the sake of clarity,
Mm-hmm.
Can you just tell us a little bit about trauma-informed?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean for this program?
And I'm going to read a little bit from where the definition is, and then I'll kind of talk about what that means to ACE. But recognizing that many adult learners come with past experiences of trauma, and then teaching methodologies that we tailor to ensure emotional safety. We want to make sure that they feel supported, that we do barrier reduction. That all leads to engagement and retention. And as our students have these robust paths, emotions leak. We can't check that at the door. And as much as we want to compartmentalize that, and my history, my background is in psychology and clinical mental health, compartmentalization isn't the best strategy when you've endured a lot of trauma. And so they come here and we have to teach them. And we have to do a good job at teaching them. And so there's a lot that goes into that.
Well, one thing that just came to my mind, just thinking along the lines historically with New Mexico, San Juan County has unfortunately been known for the not so good things, DWI rates, rates of crime, rates of violence. And so when you think about the fact that adult education is really such a key to addressing those generational problems. These are generational problems. But you have your work cut out for you. You have to have that mindset of, okay, we have this challenge. How are we going to meet the challenge? And I just love that. It gives me so much energy to hear you say that. It's not about, well, this is an impossible problem. It's we just have our work cut out for us, and we can do this.
Certainly there are challenges and opportunities, but there's not a lot that's impossible. Actually, I haven't come across anything that's impossible, but I'm a little bit of a rebel in that way. So if you tell me no, I'm going to figure out another way to do it within the parameters, right? Mm-hmm. Not a rebel in a bad way, but I really am solution focused. And so if it doesn't fit within that parameter, then we have to think in a different way. We have to take a different approach to it. No, it's not really a part of our world here. It's just, when can we, or we can't yet.
Exactly. It's not no, it's not yet.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So getting back to what I was talking about, one thing that came up, and that's why it kind of piqued our interest, is that the San Juan Community College publication, the San Juan College Communicator, wrote an article about your program and how the higher ed department has announced that you're the top performing program in the nation. Can you tell us, what exactly does that mean? Like, what is top performing in this regard?
Sure. I can definitely talk about that. And really where I would like the conversation to go is not necessarily on the accolade,
of course,
but on the work.
On
the work that's happening. I think I shared this a little bit earlier, but some of the hardest work that ACE has done, some of the years where we worked the very, very hardest and had the most challenges, were the years that we might have been in the lower performing programs within the state, within the nation. But perseverance and some experience has really brought us to a point where we know we're doing some things right, and not in a way that serves students, but in a way that retains them and it gets them to their goal of success, whatever that success goal is. And each student's different, right? But some of the things that the ACE Center has kind of done consistently for the last few years is we've increased our enrollment rates. And so like last year, we increased our enrollment by 43%. We increased our measurable skill gains, which are the metric that the feds use and our state uses to fund programs at some level. We increased that by 8% this year. We increased our HSE graduation rate by 175%. Our employment metrics have increased, and then our graduation rate, which increased hugely this year, is attributed to a couple of best practices that we just decided to do to see if it worked, and it did. So I don't know if we can sustain that, but certainly the year that we tried, it worked. And so I'm here to share some of that.
Yeah. That's actually, that's the kind of the follow-up question, really, which is, what was the gap? What is the changes that you made? And then that kind of, you're saying that as of right now, that the changes that you guys made in this first year have worked. So tell us about the gap, and then tell us, how did you change from there?
We had mostly part-time teachers in our program, and that changed to, we only have currently right now 2 part-time teachers. All the rest of our staff is full-time. And that was a huge change for our staff, because when you're part-time, there are limits to what they can give. Most part-time teachers probably have other part-time jobs or another full-time job, and then this is their part-time job. And so there's only so much that one human can do and give, despite the fact that they want to do more, and they did. Our part-time teachers really wanted to do more, but they couldn't, and they weren't being compensated for it. So it wasn't really fair. So what we did was we reorged our program to include full-time positions for instructors. And once we did that, we saw a huge increase in our measurable skill gains. Just that one change from going from mostly part-time to mostly full-time, really, really increased our measurable skill gains and our retention rate. The other thing was, when the career and college readiness standards came out, there was a huge push towards contextualization, but learning has to be meaningful and relevant to students. It just does. They're going to sit there and they won't be engaged. They're going to feel like this is a waste of their time, and they're not going to do the work that is needed for them to be successful. So engagement was a huge piece of that. And so as we learned to be better practitioners by contextualizing, by really looking at brain-based education. I can remember, Jamie, this was years ago. Jamie, I can't even tell you how long ago this was, because it's so far back there. But I remember one time in some setting, I can't even remember where, you mentioned something about training from the back of the room. And I was like, because I wrote it down in the margin of my notes. Like, okay, I got to check out what that is. Game changer.
Yes.
Game changer. I wish that I would have come across training from the back of the room 15, 20 years ago, because I feel like we would be so much more ahead of the game today. But bought it hook, line, and sinker, because it is the very best research to practice methodology that I have ever been a part of. I have ever seen. And, there are those like flavor of the month things that come in and you try them and then they go away and then there's something else and something else. This is sticky. This is going to be here. Yes. It is relevant. It engages students. It makes sure that we are designing instruction around how we learn and the best ways that we learn. And that has been a game changer for our program. Everything that we do now is brain-based. Everything.
I can't tell you how many times I wanted to call it teaching from the back of the room, not training from the back of the room, even though, of course, it works in a training situation. Of course. It's so applicable to the classroom.
Yeah, and thank you for plugging another Propel project. TBR, guys. This interview will continue on the next part of this episode. Thank you for listening to the NMEA podcast.